The shuttle dropped through Earth's atmosphere without a sound. Inside, Ambassador sat perfectly still, his four silver eyes watching the blue planet grow larger through the observation window. His silver skin reflected the light of the sun as it broke through the clouds. He was tall, even by standards, and his posture was straight like a soldier standing at attention. Was early, 3 hours early to be exact. Among his people, being early was not unusual. Time was sacred to them. Every moment had its purpose. Every schedule was followed with perfect precision. The idea of being late was considered a sign of weakness, a failure of character that could ruin careers and break alliances. But today was not early because of duty. He was early because of curiosity, and perhaps, if he was honest with himself, a little bit of suspicion. His wife had left their quarters on the orbital station that morning without explanation. She had simply said she had business on Earth's surface. When asked what kind of business, she had looked at him with those calm, unreadable eyes of hers and said, "There is something I must understand about humans, something I cannot learn from reports." That answer had bothered him all morning. Was a cultural analyst, one of the best in the Dominion. She had spent 9 cycles studying human civilization. She had read their books, watched their films, analyzed their politics and their wars and their art. If there was something about humans she did not understand, could not imagine what it might be. So he had decided to follow her, not to spy exactly, just to observe, to understand. The shuttle landed in a quiet field outside a small human city called Columbus, activated his personal cloaking field as he stepped onto the grass. The device bent light around his body, making him invisible to human eyes. He could walk among them without being seen, without disturbing their daily lives. He checked the tracking signal from his communicator. She was close, less than 2 kilometers away, in a residential area filled with small houses and green lawns and strange human vehicles parked along the streets. Began to walk. The neighborhood was quiet. Children played in yards while their parents watched from porches. Dogs barked at nothing. Somewhere music played from an open window. Found it all very strange. They lived in great towers of crystal and metal where every sound was controlled and every space was designed for maximum efficiency. These human homes seemed chaotic by comparison, messy, unpredictable. And yet there was something peaceful about it, something could not quite name. He found the house at the end of a quiet street. It was small and yellow, with a garden that had grown wild with flowers and weeds. Wind chimes hung from the porch, making soft sounds in the breeze. A wooden sign near the door read, "Welcome, friends." Through the front window could see them. Sat at a kitchen table across from an elderly human woman. The woman had white hair and kind eyes, and her hands shook slightly as she lifted a cup of tea to her lips. Medical monitors were wrapped around her wrist, their small lights blinking softly. Knew her name from the reports. Was 68 years old. She had been a school teacher for most of her life, and after she retired, she had volunteered with the Human Government's Program for Relations. That was how she had met Daniel Price. Daniel had been 7 years old when his parents died. They had been engineers on a human exchange mission, working to build the first joint space station between the two civilizations. A shuttle accident had killed them both, leaving Daniel alone in a universe that suddenly seemed very cold and very empty. Had taken him in, not because anyone told her to, not because of duty or obligation. She had simply seen a frightened little boy who needed a home, and she had opened her door. She raised Daniel alongside her own daughter. She taught him to read and to cook and to ride a bicycle. She helped him with his homework. She held him when he cried at night, missing parents he would never see again. She gave him birthday parties and holiday dinners and all the small, ordinary moments that make a childhood whole. And Daniel had grown into a remarkable man. He became a diplomat, one of the most respected voices in human relations. His work had helped prevent 2 wars and had opened trade routes that benefited billions of beings across the galaxy. Himself had worked with Daniel many times, and he considered the human a friend, but had never met. He knew about her only from Daniel's stories and from the official files. She was just a name in a report, a footnote in the biography of a more important person. Now, watching through the window, began to wonder if he had been wrong about that. Was leaning forward in her chair, her silver hands folded on the table. Her posture was different than had ever seen. Usually his wife held herself with perfect dignity, her spine straight and her expression controlled. But now she seemed almost relaxed, almost human. Was talking, her voice too soft for to hear through the glass. But whatever she was saying was listening with complete attention. Her 4 eyes never blinked. Her body never moved. Felt something strange in his chest. It was not anger. It was not jealousy. It was something else entirely. Something that felt almost like wonder. He had been married to for 12 cycles. In all that time, he had never seen her like this. She was always so controlled, so careful with her emotions. Did not show feelings easily. They considered emotional displays to be primitive, a weakness left over from their evolutionary past. But here, in this small kitchen in this small house on this small planet, seemed different. She seemed almost vulnerable. Moved closer to the window, his cloaking field humming softly. He needed to hear what they were saying. He needed to understand what was happening. Because whatever it was, he realized, it was changing everything he thought he knew about his wife. And perhaps everything he thought he knew about humans. Found a position near the side of the house where he could hear through a partially open window. The autumn breeze carried the scent of dying leaves and something warm and sweet that he later learned was called apple pie. Had baked it that morning, even though her hands had trembled the entire time. Inside, the conversation continued. "More tea, dear?" asked, already reaching for the pot. "I am adequate," replied. Then she paused as if correcting herself. "I mean no thank you, I have enough." Smiled. It was a warm smile, the kind that reached all the way to her eyes. "You're getting better at that. When Daniel first came to live with me, he used to talk like a little robot, all formal and proper. It took him years to relax." "Daniel speaks of you often," said. "He credits you with everything he has become." "Oh, that's nonsense," waved her hand dismissively. "I just gave him a bed and some home-cooked meals. He did all the hard work himself." Watchd's expression change. It was subtle, barely noticeable to anyone who did not know her. But he had spent 12 cycles studying that face, and he could see the shift in her eyes. She was analyzing words, turning them over in her mind like a scientist examining a specimen. "You underestimate your contribution," said carefully. "Among my people, when a child loses its parents, it is sent to a training facility. It is raised by instructors who teach it skills and discipline. There is no individual attention, no personal connection. The child becomes productive, but it does not become whole." Smile faded slightly. "That sounds terribly lonely." "It is efficient," replied. But even as she said the words, something in her voice suggested doubt. "We do not believe in forming attachments that might interfere with duty. Emotions are considered obstacles to clear thinking." "And what do you believe?" asked quietly. The question hung in the air like smoke. Held his breath, waiting for his wife's answer. In all their years together, he had never heard anyone ask what she believed. Did not ask such questions. Beliefs were private things, kept hidden behind walls of logic and tradition. Was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than had ever heard it. "I am no longer certain what I believe," she admitted. "For 9 cycles I have studied your species. I have read your history and analyzed your behavior patterns. By every measure I know, humans should have destroyed themselves long ago. You are violent. You are irrational. You make decisions based on feelings rather than facts." Nodded slowly. "That's all true." And yet, continued, you have not destroyed yourselves. You have built civilizations that span continents. You have created art that moves even hearts. You have reached out to the stars and made friends of species you once feared. She paused. How? How what, dear? How do you survive? Leaned forward and could see the genuine confusion in her eyes. By all logical calculations, your species should have failed, but you continue. You grow. You thrive. I have spent 9 cycles trying to understand why, and I still do not have an answer. Set down her teacup and looked at with an expression of gentle understanding. May I tell you a story? Please. When Daniel first came to live with me, he was so angry. Angry at the universe for taking his parents. Angry at himself for surviving when they didn't. Angry at me for trying to help him. His voice grew distant, as if she were looking back through the years. He used to break things. Dishes, toys, furniture. He would throw terrible tantrums and then cry himself to sleep. Listened without interrupting. One night, continued, I found him in the backyard at 3 in the morning. It was winter, and he was sitting in the snow in his pajamas, just staring up at the stars. I went out and sat beside him, and I asked him what he was looking for. What did he say? He said he was looking for his parents. He thought maybe if he looked hard enough he could see the place where they died. Maybe he could see them somehow. Eyes grew wet, but she did not cry. So I sat with him. I didn't tell him he was being foolish. I didn't tell him to come inside. I just sat with him in the snow until the sun came up. Felt something twist in his chest. He did not know what the feeling was, but it was powerful. After that night, said, something changed in Daniel. He was still angry sometimes. He still had bad days, but he started to trust me. He started to believe that I would stay, that I would not leave him no matter what. Why did you stay? Asked. He was not your child. You had no obligation to him. Smiled again, and this time there was something fierce in it, something strong. Because that's what love is, dear. It's staying when it would be easier to leave. It's sitting in the snow at 3 in the morning because someone you care about needs you. It's choosing, every single day, to put someone else first. Was quiet. Could see her processing the words, trying to fit them into her understanding of the universe. Among, said slowly, we have a concept called it means duty bond. It is the closest thing we have to what you describe, but is based on obligation, on contract, on mutual benefit. Love isn't a contract, said gently. Love is a gift. You give it freely without expecting anything in return. And sometimes the people you give it to will disappoint you. They'll hurt you. They'll make mistakes. But you keep loving them anyway because that's what it means to be human. She reached across the table and took hands in her own. Her old, weathered fingers wrapped around the smooth, silver skin of the alien diplomat's wife. That's how we survive, said. Not because we're strong or smart or logical, but because we love each other, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when it doesn't make any sense. Watched his wife's face. For the first time in 12 cycles, he saw something break behind her eyes. Something old and hard and carefully constructed began to crumble. And in that moment, he understood why he had come here. She had not come to study humans. She had come to learn how to feel. The kitchen was quiet except for the soft ticking of an old clock on the wall. Remained outside, invisible and motionless, watching his wife hold hands with a dying human woman. He had never seen touch anyone like this. Did not touch casually. Physical contact was reserved for medical procedures and formal ceremonies. Even between bonded pairs, touching was rare and purposeful. But here was, holding hands as if she were afraid to let go. You are ill, said. It was not a question. Her voice carried a weight that did not recognize. Nodded slowly. The doctors say I have about 6 months, maybe less. There's something wrong with my heart, and at my age there's not much they can do about it. Does Daniel know? He knows I'm sick, but I haven't told him how bad it is. Smile was sad. He worries too much. He would drop everything and come rushing home, and I don't want that. He has important work to do. The whole galaxy needs him. His grip tightened. You would hide the truth from him to protect his career. No, dear. I would hide the truth from him to protect his heart, sighed. Losing his parents nearly destroyed him. I'm afraid that losing me might finish the job. You underestimate him, said. He is stronger than you know. Maybe, admitted. But strength isn't just about surviving hard things. It's about having people to lean on when you're weak. And when I'm gone, who will Daniel lean on? The question sat between them like a stone dropped in still water. Thought about Daniel. He thought about all the times they had worked together, negotiating treaties and resolving conflicts. Daniel was always calm, always reasonable, always willing to find common ground. He had a way of making even the most stubborn diplomats feel heard and understood. But behind that calm exterior had sometimes glimpsed something else, a sadness that never quite went away, a loneliness that no amount of success could fill. Now he understood where that sadness came from, and he understood why he was so afraid. Inside spoke again. May I tell you something? Of course, dear. When I first came to Earth, I believed that humans were inferior to. Your technology was primitive. Your societies were chaotic. Your emotions made you weak and unpredictable. His voice was steady, but there was something new in it, something that sounded almost like shame. I was wrong. Waited patiently. I have studied many species across the galaxy, continued. They who build ships that can cross star systems in days. They who have conquered death itself and live for thousands of years. The crystalline collective, who share a single mind across billions of individuals. They sound impressive, said. They are impressive. By every measure of power and advancement, they are superior to humans in every way. Paused. And yet when I am among them, I feel nothing. They are cold, efficient, perfect, but they are not alive, not truly. What do you mean? They have forgotten how to feel. They have optimized themselves so completely that they have lost everything that makes life worth living. They do not know joy or sorrow or love. They exist, but they do not live. Released hands and sat back in her chair. Her 4 eyes were wet with something that looked almost like tears, though knew that was impossible. Did not cry. Humans are different, said. You feel everything. You laugh and cry and rage and forgive. You make mistakes and learn from them. You hurt each other and heal each other. You are messy and chaotic and irrational. That doesn't sound like a compliment, said with a small laugh. It is the highest compliment I know how to give. His voice cracked and felt his own heart skip a beat. Because despite all your flaws, despite all your weaknesses, you have something that no other species in the galaxy possesses. What's that? Hope. The word hung in the air like a bell that had just been struck. Humans hope, continued. Even when everything is lost, even when logic says there is no reason to continue, you hope anyway. You believe that tomorrow can be better than today. You fight for a future you may never see. His eyes filled with tears. That's a very kind thing to say. It is not kindness, it is truth. Leaned forward again and her voice became urgent. You raised a boy who had lost everything. You gave him hope when he had none. You taught him that love is stronger than loss, that connection is more important than success, that being human is not a weakness but a gift. I just did what any mother would do. No, shook her head. You did what no would do. You chose to love a child who was not your own. You chose to sacrifice your time and energy and heart for someone who could never repay you. You chose compassion when indifference would have been easier. Wiped her eyes. Why does this matter so much to you, dear? Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. Because I have never known love, she admitted. My bonding with was arranged by our families. It was a political alliance, nothing more. We share duties and responsibilities, but we do not share ourselves. In 12 cycles of marriage, I have never felt what you describe. Outside felt the words hit him like a physical blow. He had always known their bonding was political. It was the way. But he had never realized how much that arrangement had cost his wife. I came here today, continued, because I wanted to understand. I wanted to know what it feels like to love without obligation, to care without expectation, to give without receiving. Reached out and touched his face. It was a gesture so intimate, so human that it should have been shocking, but did not pull away. It's never too late to learn, dear, said softly. Love isn't something you're born with, it's something you choose, every day, every moment. It's a practice, not a destination. How do I begin? Smiled through her tears. You've already begun. You're here, aren't you? You're asking questions, you're opening your heart. She paused. That's the hardest part. Everything else comes naturally. Watched his wife close her 4 eyes and take a deep, shuddering breath. Something was changing inside her. Something fundamental and irreversible. And for the first time in his life felt something stir in his own chest. Something warm, something hopeful. Something that felt almost like love. The afternoon light had shifted, painting the kitchen in shades of gold and amber. Had been standing outside for nearly 2 hours, his cloaking field beginning to strain from extended use. But he could not leave. What he was witnessing was too important, too profound to walk away from. Inside, reached into the bag she had brought with her. Recognized it as her personal satchel, the one she used for carrying sensitive materials between diplomatic meetings. He had never seen her use it for anything unofficial. A small crystalline vial, no larger than a human finger. The liquid inside glowed with a soft blue light that pulsed gently, as if it were breathing. Stared at the vial with confusion. What is that, dear? This is called regenerative serum, said. Her voice was careful, measured, as if she were delivering a prepared statement. It was developed by our scientists 3 centuries ago. It can repair cellular damage, reverse the effects of aging, and cure most diseases known to galactic medicine. His eyes widened. That sounds like a miracle. It is by human standards. Among it is reserved only for the most valuable members of our society, political leaders, military commanders, essential scientists. Paused. It is never given to outsiders. The penalty for unauthorized distribution is exile, permanent severance from the Dominion. A who shares this serum with a non loses everything. Their home, their family, their identity. Felt ice spread through his chest. He knew about the serum, every knew, but he had never imagined that would possess it, let alone consider giving it away. Was shaking her head. I can't accept something like that, not if it would cost you everything. You can, said firmly. She pressed the vial into his trembling hands. And you will. But why? Why would you risk so much for someone you barely know? Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that seemed to fill the entire room. Because Daniel Price is the most remarkable human I have ever met, she said. When he first came to the Dominion as a junior diplomat, everyone underestimated him. They saw his youth. They saw his species. They saw weakness where there was only humility. Listened, her hands wrapped tightly around the glowing vial. But Daniel proved them wrong, continued. He listened when others talked. He found common ground when others saw only division. He made enemies into friends and turned conflicts into partnerships. In 15 years, he has done more for peace in this galaxy than centuries of diplomacy. He always was a good boy, said softly. He is more than good. He is exceptional. And when I asked him once what made him different from other diplomats, he said it was because of you. Blinked me. He said that you taught him to see the person behind the position, to understand that every being, no matter how alien or frightening, is just trying to survive, to find meaning, to be loved. His voice cracked again. He said that you showed him that strength is not about power. It is about choosing kindness when cruelty would be easier. Tears were streaming down his face now, but she did not wipe them away. I have watched Daniel work for years, said. I have seen him calm angry ambassadors and comfort grieving families. I have seen him walk into impossible situations and find solutions that no one else could imagine. And every time I ask myself how he does it, the answer was always the same. What answer? You reached out and took hands again, the vial pressed between them. Everything Daniel is, everything he has become started with you. You are the foundation of his strength, the source of his compassion, the reason he believes in the goodness of others. Was crying openly now. I just loved him, that's all I ever did. That is everything, said. That is the most powerful force in the universe, more powerful than starships or weapons or political alliances. Love made Daniel who he is, and Daniel made me understand what I have been missing my entire life. Outside felt something break inside him. For 12 cycles he had lived with. They had shared meals and duties and the cold formality of marriage, but he had never truly known her. He had never seen beneath the surface to the longing that lived in her heart. Until now. Was staring at the vial in her hands. If you give this to me, you lose everything. No, said firmly. If I do not give this to you, I lose everything. Because the galaxy needs more humans like you. It needs more people who choose love over logic, who choose compassion over convenience, who choose to sit in the snow at 3 in the morning because someone they love is hurting. She stood up from the table and looked down at with an expression that had never seen on any face. It was not coldness or calculation. It was warmth, pure, genuine warmth. I am not giving you this serum for Daniel's sake, said. I am giving it to you because you deserve to live, because your existence makes the universe better, because I refuse to let death take you when I have the power to stop it. Stared up at her with wonder. You would give up your home, your people, everything you know for a stranger. Smiled. It was an awkward expression on her silver face, like a muscle that had not been used in years. But it was real. You are not a stranger, she said. You are the mother of my friend, the teacher of my husband's favorite diplomat, the woman who proved that love is stronger than loss. She paused. And after today, you are my friend as well. Rose slowly from her chair. Her body was frail, her movements uncertain, but she wrapped her arms around and pulled her into a hug. Did not hug. Physical contact like this was considered primitive, even offensive, but did not pull away. Instead, she raised her arms hesitantly and returned the embrace. Thank you, whispered into his shoulder. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for teaching me, replied, for showing me what it means to be alive. Outside the window, deactivated his cloaking field. The device powered down with a soft hum, and suddenly he was visible again, standing alone in the garden with tears he did not know he could produce streaming down his silver cheeks. He had come here to spy on his wife, to satisfy his curiosity about her secret visit. Instead, he had discovered something far more important. He had discovered who really was. And who he wanted to become walked to the front door and knocked. The sound was soft, almost gentle, nothing like the formal announcements that were trained to deliver. Inside he heard movement, footsteps, then silence. The door opened and stood before him. Her 4 eyes widened for just a moment, then settled into calm understanding. She did not seem surprised to see him. You followed me, she said. It was not an accusation. I did. How long were you watching? Long enough. Behind appeared in the doorway. She looked at with curiosity but no fear. Her eyes were still red from crying, but there was a strength in her gaze that reminded him of Daniel. You must be the husband, said. Would you like to come in? I just made fresh tea. Hesitated. In his entire diplomatic career, he had never entered a private human home. The thought of it felt strange, almost transgressive, but something in his voice made him want to accept. I would be honored, he said. The kitchen was smaller than it had looked from outside. had to duck slightly to fit through the doorway, and his silver skin seemed to glow against the warm wooden walls. Guided him to a chair at the table, the same chair where had been sitting moments ago. "Tea?" asked, already pouring. "Please." She handed him a cup decorated with small blue flowers. The tea inside was brown and fragrant, nothing like the nutrient solutions that typically consumed. Took a careful sip and found it surprisingly pleasant. Sat across from him, her posture tense. He could see the fear in her eyes, the expectation of judgment. She had broken one of the most sacred laws of their people. By standards, she deserved condemnation, but did not feel like condemning her. He felt something entirely different. "I heard everything," he said quietly. "About Daniel, about the serum, about what you said regarding love." His voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. "Will you report me to the council?" "That depends." "On what?" Set down his teacup and looked at his wife. Really looked at her, perhaps for the first time since their bonding ceremony 12 cycles ago. "On whether you meant what you said," he continued. "About not knowing love, about our marriage being nothing more than politics." His eyes lowered. "I meant every word." The admission should have hurt. In a way it did, but beneath the pain felt something else stirring. Relief, recognition, truth. "I have felt the same way," he admitted. "For all these cycles, I have performed the duties of a husband without knowing what those duties should mean. I have shared your home and your table and your life, but I have never shared myself. And I never asked you to share yourself with me." Watched this exchange in silence, her weathered hands wrapped around her teacup. Continued, "we are taught that emotion is weakness, that attachment is vulnerability, that the heart is an organ to be controlled, not followed." He paused. "But today, watching you I saw something I have never seen before." "What did you see?" asked. "I saw you feel." His voice cracked, and he did not try to hide it. "I saw you care about someone not because of duty or obligation, but because you chose to. I saw you take a risk that could destroy everything we have built, not for political gain, but for love." Tears were forming in his eyes again. Could not cry, and yet here were tears, impossibilities made real. "I saw my wife for the first time," said, "and I realized that I have been a fool. For 12 cycles I have lived beside you without knowing you, and that failure is mine, not yours." He reached across the table and took her hands. The gesture was awkward, unfamiliar, touched so rarely that neither of them knew exactly how to do it, but the intention was clear. "The council will not forgive what you have done," said. "They will demand your exile. They will sever you from everything you have known." Nodded, accepting her fate. "Then we will face them together," continued, as partners, as whatever this new thing is that we are becoming." He squeezed her hands gently. "If you are willing to teach me what you have learned today." Stared at him with something close to disbelief. "You would give up your position, your career, everything you have worked for." "What good is a career without meaning? What good is position without purpose?" Looked at, then back at his wife. "I have spent my life building alliances between worlds, but I never stopped to build an alliance with the person who shares my home. That ends today." Smiled through her tears. "You know, you two remind me of Daniel and his first girlfriend. They spent so much time trying to impress each other that they forgot to actually talk to each other." And exchanged confused looks. "What I mean," continued, "is that love isn't about grand gestures or political risks. It's about small things, daily things, sitting together when the world is quiet, asking how someone's day was and actually listening to the answer. Being there not because you have to, but because you want to." She reached out and placed her hand over theirs, joining the three of them together. "You've both spent your lives serving your people," said. "Now it's time to serve each other, not out of duty, out of choice." The kitchen was silent except for the ticking of the clock and the soft whisper of the wind chimes outside. Three beings from different worlds sat together in a small house in Ohio, connected by something that transcended species and politics and duty. Looked at his wife with new eyes. She was not the cold analyst he had always assumed her to be. She was a woman searching for meaning, just as he was. A woman capable of great sacrifice and great love, if only someone would meet her halfway. He intended to be that someone. When Daniel was young, said softly, he used to ask me why humans were so different from aliens. I told him it's because we're messy. We feel too much. We care too hard. She smiled at the two before her. But looking at you now, I think maybe that's not just a human thing after all. Looked at with gratitude that words could not express. Thank you, she said, for everything. Thank you for seeing me, replied, and for reminding an old woman that miracles still happen. Outside, the sun was setting over Columbus, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. In 6 months, the council would convene to discuss the unauthorized distribution of regenerative serum. There would be hearings and debates and political consequences. But that was a problem for another day. Today, there was tea to drink and stories to share, and a new kind of family to build. A family made not of blood or politics or obligation, but of something far more powerful. A family made of choice. And in that small kitchen, as the last light of day faded into twilight, three beings from different worlds began to learn what humanity had known all along. That love is not weakness. It is the only strength that matters.